What really sticks with you after a D&D campaign?
Hmm.
I mean, is it beating some big bad monster or that super rare magic item? I think it's more than that.
Yeah, it probably is.
For me, it's the setting. It's those amazing places that your characters get to explore.
Yeah.
They kind of become part of the story, just like the characters themselves. Mhm.
Definitely. I like those iconic D&D locations.
Exactly.
They really pull you into the world. Players have loved them for years because they just have so much lore and history. Plus, you can adapt them to fit all kinds of campaigns, whether it's classic fantasy or like a really creepy horror game or even something totally different.
The Forgotten Realms is a perfect example.
Hmm.
It's enormous and has like every kind of terrain you can imagine. You can go from Waterdeep, this crazy busy city, to Icewind Dale, which is like a frozen wasteland.
Right.
And it works for so many different campaigns. Dungeon masters can tweak it to make it fit whatever story they want to tell.
Yeah. It really is super versatile. In the Forgotten Realms, you've got all these unique places, each with their own theme and adventure hooks, like Waterdeep, for example. It's got so much intrigue, ruled by these mysterious masked lords.
Right.
Or Baldur's Gate, this massive trade hub, but then it also has this shady criminal underground. And if your group's looking for a real challenge, there's always Icewind Dale. It's brutal trying to survive there. Then you've got the Underdark, which is a whole other thing.
Yeah.
It's like this huge network of tunnels and caverns underground. Totally different kind of danger down there.
And if you're looking for something that just screams classic D&D, Greyhawk, you can't go wrong with Greyhawk.
Absolutely. It's like a tribute to the game's roots.
Yeah.
Gary Gygax himself created it.
It's got that classic high fantasy vibe, but it's also open enough that you can do anything with it. You can run a sandbox campaign where players just roam free, or you can have a more structured story.
Yeah, there's so much you can do with it. And Greyhawk's geography is really diverse, too. You've got places like the Free City of Greyhawk, which is this huge, bustling city perfect for intrigue and all kinds of adventures.
Oh, for sure.
And then you have the Wild Coast, which is like this rough, untamed region, perfect for exploration, but watch out, it can be dangerous. And if your group loves a good old-fashioned dungeon crawl, Greyhawk's got you covered. Some of the most classic modules, like the Temple of Elemental Evil, came from Greyhawk.
Some real classics there.
Definitely.
So we've talked about classic fantasy settings, but what if you're looking for something completely different, something that really pushes the boundaries? That's where these really unique and exotic D&D settings come
Yeah,
in.
for sure. Like Eberron. It's a world where magic and technology just blend together seamlessly.
Awesome.
You've got airships cruising through the sky, these massive cities lit up by magical street lamps, and Warforged, they're sentient constructs. It's really blurring the lines between magic and machines.
It's so cool how they do that.
It really is.
One of Eberron's most famous spots has got to be Sharn, the City of Towers. It's just insane. The city that stretches up into the clouds, all these layers connected by bridges and sky rails, and people even have flying vehicles.
I know, it's wild. And where you live in Sharn kind of shows your social status. The richest people are way up high in those massive towers while everyone else is down in the streets below.
Yeah, it's a whole different world up there.
It is. But Eberron isn't all about fancy technology. There's this war that happened, the last war, and it just devastated the continent. It still hangs over everything. The whole setting has this feeling of intrigue and mystery. Like there's all these secret societies and groups working behind the scenes.
Interesting.
You really get the sense that the war's not really over, which makes any campaign set in Eberron feel a bit tense and uncertain.
That's really cool.
It is. And then there's Planescape. It's such a crazy setting. It makes you question what's real. You're thrown into the multiverse, which is basically a ton of different planes of existence. And each one has its own rules and characteristics. Imagine going through a portal in a busy city and ending up in a place where gravity works differently.
Wow.
Maybe time moves slower or faster. Or your thoughts can actually change reality. That's Planescape. The lines between what's real and what's not are always shifting. It makes for a really surreal experience. You never know what's going to happen next.
Right in the middle of Planescape is Sigil.
Oh yeah, the City of Doors.
It's built on this ring-shaped plane, and it floats in the center of the multiverse.
Yeah.
It's like a giant hub for traveling between all these different planes.
Right. And there are portals everywhere leading to all these different planes of existence. So it's this crazy mix of cultures and creatures and ideas. You could bump into angels or devils. You might meet some interdimensional being. You could even get caught up in some huge cosmic battle that spans multiple realities.
Wild. If you want fantasy and space exploration, you've got to check out Spelljammer.
Oh yeah, Spelljammer's awesome.
This setting takes D&D and launches it into space. You've got these magical ships, spelljammers, traveling through the astral sea. They explore these crystal spheres that hold entire worlds and meet all sorts of alien races.
I love it.
It's a world where magic and technology work together.
Right.
So instead of boring old rockets and spaceships, you've got these spelljammers powered by magic.
Right.
And they're not going to planets, they're going to these crystal spheres.
Yeah.
Each one has its own unique ecosystem, and they're often ruled by these powerful beings called sphere lords.
It's so creative.
Spelljammer is about way more than spaceships and aliens, though.
Uh-huh.
It's about exploration and discovering new worlds and strange creatures. And you can unravel these cosmic mysteries that have been hidden for ages.
So cool. But sometimes you want to explore the darker side of fantasy, like where it's all about horror and suspense.
Yeah.
That's where settings like Ravenloft and Dark Sun come in.
Right.
These are campaigns filled with psychological terror, tough moral choices, and you're constantly fighting to survive.
Ravenloft is like the ultimate gothic horror setting in D&D. It's made up of these domains of dread, and each one is ruled by this powerful Dark Lord. Imagine vampires, werewolves, all those classic creatures of the night, but they're trapped in their own personal hells,
Yeah.
forced to relive their worst moments over and over for eternity. It's dark.
Really dark. One of the most famous domains of dread is Barovia, ruled by the vampire Strahd von Zarovich. It's this land that's always covered in mist. The sun never shines. The villagers live in constant fear of Strahd and his minions. There's not a lot of hope in Barovia, and it really makes you question your sanity. And Dark Sun is like the total opposite of Ravenloft's gothic horror.
Yeah.
It's this brutal post-apocalyptic world where the sun is always beating down, water is really hard to find, and magic comes with a serious price.
The whole landscape is just desolate. It's all deserts and canyons and crumbling ruins. It's like a warning about what happens when magic is abused. Just surviving in Dark Sun is a constant struggle because resources are so scarce, and it's kind of a dog-eat-dog world.
Right. And there's this magic called defiling magic. It gets its power from the life force of living things.
Wow.
So every time it's used, it leaves a trail of death and destruction.
That's dark.
It is. And these powerful sorcerer kings rule their city-states with an iron fist. They use this defiling magic to stay in power. So adventurers in Dark Sun have to deal with a lot of challenges. They're fighting these crazy creatures that have adapted to this harsh environment. And they're also navigating this really complicated social and political landscape where the lines between good and evil are blurred.
Yeah, it sounds intense.
Yeah.
Okay, let's switch gears and talk about urban settings. They offer a whole different kind of D&D experience. You've got these bustling cities full of intrigue and social interaction, and you can have these epic adventures and personal stories all happening at the same time.
For sure. We already talked about Waterdeep a little bit, but it's worth diving deeper into what makes it such a cool urban setting. It's ruled by this council of masked lords, so no one knows who they are.
Oh, that's cool.
And underneath all the fancy stuff and wealth, there's this thriving criminal underworld. These powerful guilds are always fighting for control, and they've got their own secret agendas. And then there are these shady figures pulling strings from the shadows.
So many stories you could tell there.
Tons. And adventurers in Waterdeep could get wrapped up in political conspiracies or try to uncover some ancient mystery, or they might have to navigate this complex social hierarchy where everyone's obsessed with appearances, and power is a currency traded in whispers.
Sounds like my kind of place.
And Sharn, the city of towers in Eberron, offers a whole different vibe when it comes to urban intrigue. It's an architectural marvel. These towers that just pierce the sky, connected by bridges and sky rails and even flying vehicles.
I love it.
Me too. And each district in Sharn is like a little slice of Eberron's cultures and societies, each with its own unique character and opportunities for adventure.
You said before that the city's built vertically. Does that create any interesting social dynamics?
Oh yeah, for sure. The richest people live in luxury way up in the high towers, while the less fortunate are down in the busy streets and dark alleys below. And because airship travel is so common, and there are all these criminal syndicates operating, it just adds to the complexity and intrigue of the city.
That's so cool. I feel like we always talk about cities, but we can't forget about the wilderness. It's where you really see nature's raw power, and it offers a totally different kind of D&D experience.
Right.
Wilderness and frontier settings let you explore new lands, test your survival skills, and face the untamed forces of nature.
Absolutely. And a great example of a wilderness setting that will really challenge your players is the Underdark. It's this massive network of caverns and tunnels beneath the surface world.
That's a classic.
Yeah, and it's a place of constant darkness where weird and wonderful creatures lurk in the shadows. I mean, there are some serious dangers down there.
So how do you even navigate the Underdark?
You got to be smart and resourceful. The tunnels are like a giant maze, and you never know when you might run into something like a mind flare or a drow. Plus, the environment itself is a threat. But even though it's dangerous, the Underdark is also strangely beautiful. There are these glowing fungi lighting up the caverns and bioluminescent life forms that create this otherworldly atmosphere.
Okay, so Underdark is dark and dangerous, but what about a more frozen wilderness?
Well, then you've got Icewind Dale. It's a brutal frozen wasteland where it's freezing cold, the wind never stops howling, and the terrain is unforgiving. If you make even a small mistake out there, it could be deadly.
That's rough.
It is.
Yeah.
But the people of Icewind Dale are tough. They're used to living in such a harsh environment. As an adventurer, you might come across nomadic barbarian tribes, tiny villages clinging to survival, or even remnants of ancient civilizations buried under the ice and snow.
Wow.
And the creatures are just as tough. Dire wolves and frost giants are out there, and they're a constant danger.
Definitely not a place for the faint of heart. We've talked about a lot of settings that draw on traditional Western fantasy, but D&D also has these incredible culturally inspired settings based on different mythologies and storytelling traditions.
Oh, yeah. They're amazing.
It's a chance to see D&D through a completely new lens. You get to experience different cultures, face unique challenges and creatures, and really step outside the box.
For sure. Like Carter, it's inspired by East Asian cultures. It's all about samurai, mystical martial arts, and these ancient temples. Honor and tradition are super important in Carter, and the spirits of ancestors are a real presence. Your adventures there could involve training in a remote monastery, navigating the political scene in these feudal courts, or fighting against these mythical creatures from East Asian folklore.
That sounds awesome. What about a setting that's a little more jungle themed?
Well, then you've got Mastica. It's inspired by Mesoamerican cultures, so think lush jungles, ancient pyramids, and powerful gods who are actively involved in the lives of mortals. It's a land ripe for exploration. You could be uncovering lost temples, trying to figure out ancient prophecies, or figuring out the relationship between the mortal world and the divine.
There's so many options for players to choose from.
Exactly. Every one of these settings, from the familiar ones to the more exotic ones, offers a really unique and immersive D&D experience. It all comes down to picking a setting that your group is excited about and fits your playstyle. And then you use that setting as a jumping off point for telling cool stories and having epic adventures.
That's such a good point. The setting is so much more than just a backdrop for your D&D campaign. It really is like a character in its own right. It shapes the mood, the challenges you face, and the whole experience. Whether you choose to stick with a classic like The Forgotten Realms or explore something new like Eberron or Planescape, the setting should be something that inspires your imagination, gets your creative juices flowing, and helps you tell unforgettable stories. So we've traveled from busy cities to these crazy wastelands. We even went deep down into the Underdark and flew across the astral sea in those magical spelljammers. It's been quite a trip.
It has been.
We've seen all these different D&D settings, from classic fantasy to more exotic worlds, inspired by different cultures, each one offering its own style of adventure and storytelling.
Yeah, they're all so unique.
But there's one more thing we need to talk about. It's how we bring these settings to life at the game table.
You mean like actually make it real for the players? I get it. Even the most amazing setting needs a way to jump out of the dungeon master's head and into the minds of the players. And that's where maps and visual aids come in. They're not just extras, they're super important for making the game immersive and fun.
Totally. A good map can do so much. It's like a window into the world. It shows players how big everything is, how things are connected, and where different places are in relation to each other.
Right. It gives them a sense of the world's geography.
But it's not just about geography. A good map can also hint at the stories that are waiting to be told, the secrets hidden in the landscape, and the adventures that are just around the corner.
Think of a map as its own story. All those mountains and rivers and forests and cities, they're all characters in that story.
That's a cool way to think about it.
They each have their own history, personality, and secrets just waiting to be discovered.
It's like those old treasure maps, right?
Yeah, exactly.
With the faded ink and weird symbols and hints about buried treasure.
They make you want to go on an adventure.
Exactly.
And a good D&D map does the same thing. It sets the stage for adventure, and it makes players want to explore and discover new things and create their own stories within that world.
And it doesn't have to be super complicated either.
Nope. Even a simple hand-drawn map can be really effective if it shows the important information clearly.
So what makes a good map then?
Well, it needs to be clear and easy to understand. Plus, it should look cool.
Makes sense.
Players should be able to see how the world is laid out, track where they're going, and decide where they want to go and what they want to do based on what they see on the map.
Nowadays, we have so much technology to help us make maps.
Mm.
There are some really great online tools and programs that let dungeon masters create these amazing detailed maps,
Some of them even have interactive elements.
which is really cool.
The best part is that these tools aren't just for the dungeon master.
Oh, that's true.
Players can use them too.
Yeah, to create their own maps. It's a great way for players to get more involved in the game and really think about their characters and the world they live in.
Totally. Imagine a player creating a map of their character's hometown. They could include landmarks, their family's house, maybe even some secret spots. Or a rogue could sketch out the layout of a dungeon they're planning to sneak into. It just adds a whole other level to the game.
It really does. And don't forget about other visual aids. Besides maps, there are handouts, illustrations, props. You could even use music.
Yeah, anything that helps create a more immersive experience for the players.
Like imagine giving your players this old piece of parchment with a mysterious message written in some ancient language.
Ooh, I like that.
Or showing them a really cool drawing of a powerful NPC they're about to meet.
Those little touches can make a huge difference.
It's all about creating an experience that uses all the senses and pulls the players deeper into the world you've built.
Exactly. Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have.
We talked about all kinds of D&D settings, from those classic fantasy realms to more exotic worlds based on different cultures. We discussed how important it is to choose the right setting for your campaign and how to use maps and visual aids to make those settings feel real for your players. But at the end of the day, the most important thing in any D&D campaign is the people sitting around the table.
Absolutely. The players and the Dungeon Master working together, telling stories, sharing laughs, and creating memories that will last a lifetime.
That's the real magic of D&D.
Huge thanks to LitRPG Reads and Paul Bello for their insights on this topic. Their work is a goldmine of information and inspiration for D&D fans. Definitely check them out if you're looking for more awesome D&D content.
And we want to hear from you, our listeners. What are your favorite DNS settings? Share your stories, experiences, and tips for creating unforgettable settings in the comments below.
Until next time, may your dice rolls always be in your favor.